Hi, today I wanted to talk to you about a non-fiction book I read recently. It's called Gut and it's by Giulia Enders. I listened to it on Audible and the narration was by Katie Sobey. And can I just say, narration, mwah, mwah, just spot on. Even though it's got a lot of heavy content to it, it lends itself well to being listened to and being read aloud. And I think the author kept that in mind because you can just hear how sentences make more sense. I think that the overall structure was really good. It was nicely paced. I felt it was really interesting. In terms of writing style, it was really accessible. It was really easy to read or listen to. And there were very few points where I had to kind of rewind a couple of seconds to be like, oh, what was that? One of the things I really liked about it was how the science was made accessible but not dumbed down. She really kind of scaffolds it for you and sets it up nicely so you can follow along no matter where your entry point into this topic is. I think this book is really interesting for people who are into nutrition and a healthy diet, about listening to your body, but without any of the like fad diet BS. And I don't mean like scientifically proven as in let me give you a bunch of money to make my product look good. It's actually researched which is really good. I think the author does a really good job of acknowledging where the lines are within the research. This is a new and emerging topic and not everything has got a lot of evidence behind it, but she does a really good job of being like, okay, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, these are some cool ideas people are having, but they haven't been proven yet. And I think that kind of honesty really works in this book. I got a lot out of this book and a couple of things that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Quite early on she addresses the mouth and what goes on in the mouth and the saliva and all that kind of jazz, and she talks about why it's really important to brush your teeth in morning and night. And it was one of those things that like your mum tells you to do, your doctor tells you to do, your dentist tells you to do it, but you're just like, why? I brushed my teeth at night and I slept. Like, what could possibly have happened within those hours? I ate no food. And she really breaks it down as to what's happening in the saliva production and what's in the saliva versus when you're awake compared to when you're asleep. And it's really interesting. And it made me kind of realize, yeah, okay, yeah, all right, I'll do it. I'll do it. I think this book gives you a lot of life lessons without being your mum, you know what I mean? Like, she makes them sound cool and interesting and you're like, oh yeah, I will do that. That is really interesting. This is kind of like real awkward to say, but we're gonna go there. We're talking about poo. This is what this is about, all right? So this book talks about the benefits of squatting to poo. And I kind of understood this. I've been overseas, I've been confronted by the starting blocks, I've kind of had to negotiate like what do I do here? What do I do? And acknowledging that this kind of toilet has been around forever and maybe there might be a reason why we originally had these kinds of toilets. But anyone who's been on any of these squat toilets knows how bloody uncomfortable it is and how you've got to like wrestle with all your clothing and bits and pieces to a degree that you just don't have to do when you sit down. So when I was in this like fancy cafe in Adelaide one day, in the bathroom they have this kind of step, this kind of black little skinny kind of step near the toilet, and I was just like, oh yeah, cool, it's like parent friendly. But then I kind of looked at it a bit more and I was just like, probably wouldn't hold the weight of a child. And I was just like, what's the deal with that? Anyway, it turns out that if you're sitting on the toilet and you're sitting on the toilet and you put your feet on this particular kind of step, your body gets into a really awesome position and you can like poo 10 times faster. And I was just like, huh, no way, that's kind of interesting. I don't know. But in this book, she also touches on the benefits of squatting and this particular kind of step. And I was just like, well, if science says so, then maybe, I guess, we could look into it. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really funny and I wasn't necessarily expecting that. Safe to say, I quite enjoyed this book. I felt like I got a lot of really useful information out of it and I'll definitely be listening to it again and I'll definitely be gifting it to some family members who don't mind me talking to them about poo. There's a subscription this house has to the Medical Journal of Australia, and this was the one that came up most recently. And so I'm looking at this, fecal microbia transplantation. Interesting. And I was just like, more science, love me some science. Particularly after reading this book, I was just like, well, I'm gonna have to check this out. This is kind of really interesting. Like, okay, let's break down fecal, poo, microbial, like all the little good things inside your body, transplantation, given to somebody else. So basically, your poo, they mix it with salt water, they give it to somebody else who hasn't got good bacteria. That's basically it. This is a classic example of academic clickbait. I'm reading it. We took notes. But kind of disappointing article because, and look, granted, I understand why it's really important to publish nil results as opposed to like actually discovering something. Like, I get that, I do, but also just like real not that interesting. I mean, the article itself talks about people who FMT, it doesn't work for them. And who either relapse or it just doesn't, it's not successful. And they talk about the reasons why. And there were a few things within this article that I was just like, really interesting. Number one, there is a stool bank. There is a bank of people who donate their poo for science. And I was just like, interesting. I had never really considered that as a thing before. But I mean, if you're giving fecal transplants, you've got to get it from somewhere. So that makes sense. Then next, right, get this. A throwaway line. I'll read it for you. Of 10 patients who received FMT by nasogastric tube, 2 had not received pre-procedure proton pump inhibitors. Right, okay. Half that sentence garbage. What's really interesting here is FMT by nasogastric tube? What? So if someone has trouble swallowing or they've got issues getting things to their stomach, there are a bunch of different ways to do it. You can go through the mouth, through the nose, up the bum, or through the skin. That's kind of the main ways to get to the stomach if you can't properly get to the stomach. And the one that goes through your nose is called a nasogastric tube. It goes from the nose to your gastric. That's how I remember it. And I'm kind of thinking, what poor soul has to have poo injected through their nose? Like, it's in a tube, it's safe, like, I get it. If the person is having so much trouble that they have to have poo injected into their nose, they've got bigger problems, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is probably the least of their worries. But just that kind of throwaway line of like, yep, we do this via nasogastric tube. I was just like, whoa, that's insane. It's one thing to have a colonoscopy and have your insides sprayed while you're deep asleep. It's another thing to have someone standing by with a little syringe of poo going, yep, we're just going to insert this into your nose. And you're like, what? What? So safe to say this article was a really educating read, even though it didn't really add to my understanding of like gut health and that sort of thing. It opened my eyes to the way this is actually done, and yeah, I hope I don't have to do it because that sounds real unpleasant. So I want to know, are there any other academics out there who just get drawn in by those clickbait titles? You know, you think you're gonna go there for something real exciting, and then it turns out to be like, someone's life work, but not really that interesting or relevant. And I just wanted to know, how do you guys feel about academic clickbait? Because, annoying, you know? So that's what I wanted to say about Gut. It was a great book, really highly recommend picking it up if you're interested in any of those sorts of things. It does talk about poo, so, you know, just be aware of that. But otherwise, real accessible, really easy to read, get a lot out of it, and might just change your life. Not in like major ways, but you know, you might brush your teeth twice a day, or learn how to poo properly. So kind of random, but thank you. Thanks for listening. I hope you found this interesting, and tell me what you think about academic clickbait or this book if you've listened/read it. Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Why? Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. I will talk to you again soon.